Great Britain is wading deeper into the ongoing crisis in Libya. The British are sending 20 military advisors to help rebel fighters break the stalemate with Muammar Gaddafi. But some members of parliament say they are concerned the country could get pulled deeper into the conflict. British jets continue to strike Gaddafi's forces. Video released on Tuesday shows a strike on a telecommunications facility. Right now, we are joined by CBS News foreign affairs analyst Pamela Falk to talk about all of this. Thanks for being with us, Pam.
Absolutely, Betty.
Well, you know, a lot of people are calling this mission creep, which essentially means that you're going beyond the original goals of this mission. Right. Are we going to see perhaps the U.S. get involved in that as well?
Well, it's very possible. At this moment in time, President Obama has said we don't know enough about the rebels to really fund them. The lead has been taken by NATO. The lead has been taken by the British and the French. But there are U.S. intelligence advisors, and there is this big discussion in the White House about whether or not to go further. And what you are seeing on the ground is a stalemate and movement of the Gaddafi forces in Misrata and in other cities. And the rebels are sending desperate messages that we're about to be wiped out. So there is a push to do that. On the other hand, President Obama doesn't want it to become a larger war, but you're looking at Syria, Yemen, and Libya as potential stalemates.
Well, let's talk about Syria for just a second, because yesterday the government lifted the 50-year-old state of emergency. That was a key demand of anti-government protesters, but they're saying that that is not enough. So how much longer can Syria's government hold out before real change is made?
Well, Bashar al-Assad is very good at talking reform, but now he's cracking down on the protesters. And what he did today was continue to offer reforms, and that was the end of the secret court, the intelligence court, and to lift the state of emergency. Now, none of that will really do. He was brutalizing his own population, just as Gaddafi was in Libya. And so it does show a certain weakness that he's trying to make these reforms. If he holds out too long, he'll be in a situation like Gaddafi in Libya, and he may get some kind of crimes or at least allegations of crimes against him by the International Criminal Court. Right now, it's a very difficult situation in Syria because they do support Hezbollah in Lebanon. They do get aid from Iran, and U.S. doesn't have an awful lot of leverage with them.
I want to move to Cuba for just a moment, because the communist government has named Raul Castro to replace his brother Fidel. But let's just take a look at the numbers, if we will. Raul is 79 years old. Fidel is 84 years old. And the second and third ranking members of this party, they are also elderly. So is it possible that this communist party in Cuba may be on its last leg?
Well, Castro's out, Fidel Castro's out, that is, but the party's not over. No, the party will stay, but certainly this regime, this leadership, is just the old leadership that came to power in the early days in 1959 in January, and they're holding on to it. It's the only really loyalists in the country. There's a lot of skepticism about the reforms that were announced, that you can sell apartments. There is a little bit of a private sector, but it's not enough given how resistant the country is to any kind of reforms. I think from a long time ago, Castro and both Raul and Fidel want the country to basically stay under the socialist rule until they're out of the picture, and then who knows what happens and change occurs. But right now, this leadership, they don't understand capitalism, they don't know what to do about it, and it's unlikely to see any real change.
All right, but we have seen successful groups and uprisings in other countries throughout the Middle East. But when we move to Cuba, what do you know about some anti-government protesters and uprisings, and is that forming?
Not really, because Castro is basically, most of the protesters have voted with their feet, and Castro has been very oppressive during the last, all his time in office, keeping that down, arresting people, putting them in jail. And so there hasn't been the ability for any kind of opposition in any real sense to form. When there have been, they've been asked to go. And that's really what has happened. I think it's very quiet, but once they're out of the scene, which eventually will happen, then you'll start to see some leadership.
All right, CBS News foreign affairs analyst Pamela Falk, thanks so much for your insight. We always appreciate it.
Absolutely, Betty.